This is part 3 of my Cuba series. I just want to keep the flow going, so if you've no idea what I'm talking about, part 1 and part 2 are on the page. To those who are waiting for this, let's go. Why, if no other European government wants to support radical Spain, did Nathan send August to Cuba? Almaden. The Almaden mines in Castilla-La Mancha are the largest mercury deposits in the world. Mercury is essential to refining gold and silver. The entire colonial extraction system from the Americas runs on this. Who sent him? Mayor Amschel Rothschild himself. Why is your most important agent dedicated to managing Spain? Why, when it came time to negotiate the Quicksilver contracts with Madrid, Nathan sends his son? And it's Lionel who secures Rothschild control over Almaden. That loan they gave to Spain is secured against these mines. Cuba wasn't liberated by the Americans from the Spanish. Spain got 15 million francs, and the Rothschilds got control over the commodity that processes every ounce of gold and silver extracted across the colonies. And that contract has been renewed continuously since 1912. Daniel Weissweiler travelled with Lionel to Madrid, and when Lionel left, Weissweiler stays. And it's from then that he becomes the permanent Spanish agent for all Rothschild houses. So when August is sent in 1837, the Rothschilds already have interests in Cuba. Cuba's sugar revenue was the primary source of Spain's ability to repay the Rothschilds. The colony pays the debt for the overspending of the wealthy in Madrid. He never actually gets to Cuba. His ship docks in New York instead, in the middle of a financial panic. This all then goes on to talk about how Belmont betrayed the Rothschilds by setting up his own office in New York. The first agent didn't get to Cuba, so they send the second one. This is Karl Scharfenberg. He was a clerk at the Paris House. He was first posted in Madrid, where he worked inside the Spanish government's financial operations. He was then dispatched to Havana in 1838, 1 year after Belmont bounced. His briefing was to operate in Cuba on behalf of the Rothschilds and the Spanish government simultaneously, not an observer. The representative of both the creditor and the colonial power, sitting in the colony watching from inside. And he stayed in Cuba for 28 years. His correspondence archive runs from 1845 to 1873. 6 boxes. 28 years of letters from Havana to London. Tobacco prices. Which London houses are competing in the market? How to keep Cuban producer prices down by setting brokers against each other. In his own words, put our broker in competition with 2 or 3 others to ensure we get the best prices. This is a Rothschild agent in Havana in 1847 writing to London about how to suppress what Cuban producers could charge for their own tobacco. 50 years before the war. Meanwhile, in Madrid, Daniel Weissweiler had the entire Spanish government on a leash. When Spain refused to cooperate, the Rothschilds declare, in Weissweiler's own words, a stock market war in London and Paris against Spain. They threatened to crash the price of Spanish government bonds on the international market. So Spain backed down every time. Spain was borrowing against future production value of Cuban plantations, and everything from Cuban customs duties to Cubans' mortgage bills was pledged as collateral to these European creditors. Except, let's be really surgical, it's not European creditors, it's the fucking Rothschilds. Spain gets trapped in this because it is spending the money it's borrowing from the Rothschilds on the military that is required to suppress the revolution in Cuba. So the more Spain's military costs spike, the more Spain goes into debt. Then in 1895, when the Cuban Independence War relaunches and Spain's military costs are really starting to spike, Spain goes to the Rothschilds, who have been financing Spain for the last 60 years, and they say no. They refuse any further credit. Remember that guy who got lost on his way to Cuba? Remember I told you he stopped in New York and he just stayed there? He set up an office? And that the Rothschild archive presents this as, you traitor. Okay, 1895 though. The Rothschilds in Europe say, no, we are not giving you any more money, Spain. You can go to his firm. August Belmont & Co. was founded in May 1837 on 78 Wall Street, New York City. The Rothschild archive says that this was not authorized by them, but I think that's crap. And so does Bloomberg. This archive piece from Bloomberg states it plainly. He was assigned the Cuba brief. He left Europe. He rerouted via New York. He never completed it. The Cuban portfolio does not disappear. It transfers. Scharfenberg takes it in Havana. But Belmont managed the US side. The Massachusetts Historical Society holds the Belmont Papers. It documents his role as primary underwriter for U.S. Treasury bonds during the Mexican-American War, underwriter of Union government bonds during the Civil War, Democratic National Committee chairman, 1860 to 1872, simultaneously running the party and the Rothschild U.S. agency, owner of the New York World newspaper, used to shape Democratic political coverage. Belmont marries Caroline Sidall Perry in 1849. Her father is Commodore Matthew Galbraith Perry. Matthew Perry. Weird. Probably not related to the Friends star. He is the man who opens Japan to US trade by sailing warships into Tokyo Bay in 1853. And his brother, her uncle, was John Slidell, Louisiana senator, Confederate diplomat, and the man who attempts to broker European recognition of the Confederacy during the Civil War. He didn't make it to Havana because he was more useful in New York. The Rothschild agent in New York is family with the man who tried to bring the Confederacy into international legitimacy, and the man who forced Japan to open to US commerce. Those are not coincidences of a social life. You are looking at the connective tissue of the American imperial class. At this point, there are so many different directions that I can take this Cuba series. It just goes in every direction. So I'm going to ask you, what do you want from me now? What should we cover in the next video? What questions do you have? Leave your questions in the comments. Give me your theories. I want input. If you're Cuban, let me know. I am an independent journalist. I rely on your support. If you can tip me even $1, it helps. My funding page is at buymeacoffee.com/AliMacForever. I publish regularly on Substack, and if you can support me here, you can take out a paid subscription to access my entire archive of work. I'll be in the Discord all day chatting about this and dropping sources. If you want to join, this is the link. These links do expire, so if you don't get it this time, just keep an eye out. I publish it a lot. If you've watched this far in the series, thank you. Your support means a lot. And even if you can't afford to support me financially, you can still do a lot by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and downloading this video.